Welcome to Musings and Modalities. I'm your host, Tristen Stawicki. Think of me as your pragmatic shaman bestie. Join in with other high-vibe, lovely people as I unravel spiritual ideas to help create change and growth in your life. I cover a variety of spiritual topics, sharing knowledge to meet you wherever you are in your journey. As a shaman, astrologer, and human design reader, I help you understand how to make informed decisions and incorporate different modalities using discernment and your own intuition. Today, you will gain powerful shamanic healing tools you can use to incorporate spiritual practices in non-traditional ways. Whether you're just beginning or need a knowledgeable best friend with the next phase of your journey, I'm here to help. Stay tuned. Musings and Modalities starts now. Hey everyone, and welcome to Musings and Modalities. I'm Tristen Stawicki, and I'm so excited for today's episode, Stop Sounding Watered Down, How Comedy and Improv Transforms Your Brand Messaging with Jill Pavlov. Jill is a brand messaging coach, copywriter, and comedian who helps talented professionals stop sounding like watered down versions of themselves and start showing up as the powerful voices they are. She's the founder of Copy Pop and the signature program Pop Into Your Power, blending improv, storytelling, and brand strategy to help people clarify their message, amplify their presence, and build personal brands that turn heads online and off. She's studied comedy at the Second City and now performs with Just the Funny in Miami, bringing a mix of humor and sharp insight to every stage. Jill, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
I love every time we chat. It's so fun, and I just feel like so lit up from our conversation. And so I'm so happy you were able to join the show. What I love about your background is that you take something so uniquely you, right? You really highlight the parts of you that are a little bit different, a little more interesting, which is your love of comedy and improv, and you use it as a key differentiator in your business. So how did you come to that decision? What made you feel safe enough to pop?
Yeah, it's a pop mash. Man, I wish I could say that it just hit me like a lightning bolt and I just had this idea and I went and I pursued it. But like a lot of the great things in my life, it actually found me. I started out my business doing copywriting because that's what I did in the corporate world. And I have a theatrical background. I really wasn't pursuing it beyond a hobby at this point. But it really was another woman who kind of saw something in me and who had a networking group and asked me to do what we titled at the time Improv for Entrepreneurs. And that's actually really how it was born, in creating this workshop that I was just somewhat randomly asked to do. I just realized how much my worlds actually do collide, and how all the experiences I've had in my however many decades old I am, how they've all accumulated to this point where I'm really able to take everything that I've learned and make it into this program that absolutely has never existed before.
That's beautiful. And it's so important when we think about like entertaining, right? And like being engaging is what we all want to be, whether on stage, in copy, wherever. And it's so beautiful to use this gift you have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's no longer an option to be out there on social media if you are a business owner in 2026. And so whether you signed up for it or not, you're now a content creator. Congratulations, because that's how we market these days, that it's just how the world is run, and you cannot have boring content. If you have boring content, no one's going to watch it. So yeah, everyone needs to learn how to be a little bit entertaining. And that doesn't always necessarily mean that you have to be as ragingly funny as I am. But it does mean that you need to know how to keep your audience's attention.
Absolutely. And really sticking to your talents, right? There's nothing worse when someone tries to be funny and it's just not their gift. And that's okay. But being sincere, being authentic always reads true.
Yes, you never want to force anything.
And I love improv. Like I grew up on Saturday Night Live back when it was really, really good. I loved like the Dropout streaming service and just everything that improv in person or, in video gives us. But folks can feel really intimidated by that and by that being an element of your toolkit. And can you share why it's so helpful and impactful, and help folks kind of feel more comfortable with it?
Yeah, well, I think one of the reasons that it is so impactful is because it is intimidating. Like, I'm not going to lie and sit here and be like, yeah, it's the easiest thing you'll ever do. For me, who's been on stage since I was in fifth grade, it's not intimidating, it's easy, but the magic is in overcoming that intimidation. The word improv comes from the word improvisation, which doesn't mean to be funny. It means to do what's in the moment. And so a lot of us as business owners, as founders, entrepreneurs, we have to do things that are scary and intimidating every day. And it really just comes down to exposure therapy, right? If you can do something as silly and crazy and as heart palpitating as improv is, well, why can't you reach out to someone on LinkedIn and ask if they want to buy from you?
Mm.
If you can get over the fear of all of that, then you can get over that fear of rejection that we sometimes get as business owners.
No, that makes complete sense, especially when I think we've all been on a call where we don't have an answer, right? And we're looked to have the answer and we got to figure it out it live, you
For
know?
me, it might be this very call right now. You never know.
Exactly. And so it's just like we all use this. It's just whether or not we're using it as a tool, as frequently as we can be. Like it's a skill we all have some aptitude for.
100%. And I feel like in this day and age of ChatGPT and AI, everything, we're kind of slowly losing that skill because we're practicing it less and less, which is why I really have fallen in love with what I do for founders, because there's not a space that exists where we can practice this type of stuff, and it's so needed.
It really, really is. And I also want to highlight, like, not only is this helpful for founders and that do speaking engagements, but we all have interviews, right? We've all been in a position where we're trying to work with someone, have a partnership, get a job. This is all super helpful.
Yeah, I mean, every networking event that you go to is an interview. I mean, how many of us, I mean, you would never guess how introverted I actually am, but I've just learned to push past that. I've learned to somewhat play a role when I go out to networking events. Like anyone can for 2 hours kind of put on a mask. And I'm not saying change who you are completely, but I have to put on my extroverted mask. I have to remember my mission for my business and what I'm about, because otherwise you'll find yourself at a networking event just, I don't know, chatting with the bartender or standing in the corner not knowing what to do. But when you're able to practice your pitch and practice those talking points that get people really interested in your business, that's one of the ways that you're always being interviewed as a business owner, whether you know it or not, and you need to nail those impressions.
It is so key and so important. And while we're talking about how they can really work through that, what are the three biggest mistakes folks are making when they're pitching themselves in whatever environment they're in?
They are, first off, they're focusing too much on themselves and not enough on the other person. Going back to my copywriting days, one of the things that I would always make very clear to my clients is that this website copy does not tell your story, even though you're the business. This website copy is telling your customer's story. It's telling your client's story, because we are all, I don't want to say self-absorbed, but we're all going around this world in our own little worlds, thinking about what's in it for me. And when you lead your pitch with who you are and why you're important, those listening skills go down on the other end. So lead with the other person and not with yourself. I would say another thing is that people, they don't really know their messaging points or their mission well enough. So when someone asks them about their company, they just start throwing stuff like it's spaghetti at the wall and hoping that something sticks. They don't necessarily, this is kind of like a part 2A, but they don't really know how to read the room. So instead of looking for those cues that someone's interested in something that you said, they're just spitting out and talking at you with information about their company, just like hoping something is going to go. And I would say the third mistake is being over rehearsed. Some people are over rehearsed. I was just on a virtual networking call today, and I could tell this gentleman was just reading off a paragraph. Like he was literally reading it, and I wanted to get my hands on him so badly and be like, I can help you, just rehearse with me, because there's a way to remember what you want to say without sounding so scripted.
And there's also like the idea of when people have a full paragraph or when someone has to pitch themselves and they take literally 2 minutes and you're like, oh, I've like done my grocery list. I'm literally anywhere but here. Like that's a problem.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, ask questions. Like, I know that you have your own agenda, but that's not going to read to someone else if it doesn't fit with theirs. So, like, ask questions. And sometimes, like, you're just not, that person's just not going to be your client. You have to know when, like, okay, I'm just not going to sell to you. And that doesn't mean, like, okay, bye, I'm never going to talk to you again, because maybe they'll know someone who they can refer to you, but also know, like, when to quit it.
hmm And when you think about when to pivot the pitch, so maybe they're not an ideal client for one of your services, but you're like, oh, this new thing I'm spinning up, you actually might be a good fit for. Any tips like on how to pivot the pitch kind of in the moment, very similar to improvisation?
It's really, there's nothing, like, there's no framework that I can give you, right? There's no like magic sentence or anything. It really is. And this is why we practice improv so much, because it's about thinking on your feet. It's about listening and then thinking on your feet. Active listening is such an important part of improv. So many of the exercises that I play in team settings have to do with how well are you listening to someone else, because that's how you know how to pivot. That if you've really been listening to what they need, then you should know your business well enough to know how you can help that person and pivot. And another thing is, like, sometimes you can just drop the business talk too. If you realize that maybe this is someone that is not a client or a customer for your business, but you still want to have them in your world, like, connections don't just have to be business connections, right? Maybe you're looking for a new roommate or something, or maybe you need a kidney later on in life. And I know that that sounds really silly, but I've seen people ask for kidneys on Facebook. And guess what? It's all about who you know, because you never know. And that's why it's important to always be nice to everyone and kind to everyone, because you never know who you might need to help you or who you might need in the future.
No, that makes complete sense. Especially like there's so often I meet people that like there's a beautiful vibe and we're like, we don't know exactly how we're going to work together, if at all, but there's something here, you know?
Right. It's like, just stay connected. You never know. Things do, that's one of the hardest things I've had to learn being a founder is patience, just the principle of patience. And that's not necessarily an improv principle, but learning that not everything has to happen at once. You don't have to meet the person and get the sale that night. We kind of, some of us go into panic mode because this is our life. This is our livelihood. This is how we make our money. And we want to feel secure and we want to know that we have this sale, but you have to get a little bit comfortable in the fact that it's such a long-term game.
It really, really is. And as we think about kind of storytelling, right, which often when we are pitching, when we are connecting with others, when we're creating content, there's the element of the story that you have to have because that's what people remember. And so, how do you see storytelling changing in 2026?
I think that storytelling is just going to continue to get bigger, and there's going to be a huge focus on authenticity. There's going to be a huge focus on really genuine content. At this point in time, we can all identify those chat GPT tells. If you've been on LinkedIn recently, it's just a bunch of bots talking to each other, essentially. And I think that the way that we look for chat GPT tells, we're going to be looking for the opposite of that now. Like, even seeing some grammatical mistakes sometimes feels like such a relief, because you know that a human did that. So anything that feels really, really human and real, if you're telling some kind of story that ChatGPT clearly could not have made up, that's very intriguing versus just pushing out general information, general value posts. Like, when you make something personal, it hits so much more. So don't be afraid to give away a little bit of your own story.
I was talking to someone recently on LinkedIn, and she said something beautiful that I want to credit to her, which is kind of in the moment when you're going through something that ultimately will be a story, right? When there's some sort of like emotional trauma or you're in it and there's a lot of feelings around it, it's often better to like take a beat and really sit with it and move past that emotion and then share it from a place of like wisdom and experience. And I think that's so beautiful when we think about, any form of storytelling to really think through.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much beauty in the power of a pause too. People sometimes think that pauses feel a lot longer when you're the one making them versus when you're the one listening to them. But a pause can be powerful, not just for the effect of the audience, but like you said, for you to kind of get your thoughts and your emotions together before speaking.
When we think about kind of a moment in your work where you realize the approach that you have is really working, and I feel like you're very similar to me, where you're always like adding to your toolkit and you're like, oh, we can tweak this, we're also seeing connections here and things like that. What was that moment for you?
I would say after there's been a few along the journey. I even had one this morning, which I'll share in a
Oh,
second too. But the very first workshop that I did, where it was in person, there was somewhere between 20 to 25 women there who, when they got there, looked like they wanted to dig a hole through the floor or do anything that they could to escape. They had no idea what they were in for. And watching their confidence grow in 90 minutes was huge. But it was really at the very end when we were doing a takeaway circle. And one of the women, she said, I was always taught to be seen and not heard. And now I know that I can have a voice. And hearing herself give herself permission. So many of us have not given ourselves permission to be our biggest, boldest selves. There's something that we're holding back, and there's a reason why. And it's whether it's because society has told us to, or we're afraid of failure, or we're afraid of success, which is another one. There's something that we're holding back. And for especially women, because in the very beginning, I worked with exclusively women founders, to see that confidence grow and them to step into their power, which is why I called my program Pop Into Your Power. It was just such a momentous moment for me, because for someone to break that thought that they've been taught as a kid to know that they can be something bigger it was so touching. It just made everything that I do feel bigger than what it is.
that's beautiful. And it was life-changing, right?
Yeah.
That experience for her and the ability for someone to vulnerably share that is also really lovely, that you created a safe space.
Yes. And I have one of my current clients. She came to me, for my program, some people come to me because they're really focused on brand messaging and they don't know how to do their content. And then some people come to me for a little bit of the confidence part. They need a little bit more love in that area. And one of my current clients is one of those people. And she really didn't get on camera much for her company before she started working with me. And I was just scrolling through Instagram this morning, and I scrolled through and there was a reel of her, a funny, humorous reel of her, and she was dancing and getting into character. And I was like, my baby. And so it's just the coolest feeling to see people step outside of themselves, take those risks, get outside of their shell, because that helps you even beyond business too. When you take those risks, it touches every area of your life.
It does. And I also wanted to highlight the ability to clearly communicate your own messaging, like whatever you are and what you're doing is so important, especially as people are kind of losing some labels they've had, as people are going through layoffs and they're really uncovering who they are. I know that we were talking about, if you don't mind me sharing, the copywriter label, right? And just saying, oh, it's actually, I've grown past this. Like it's
Yeah.
not helpful in my goals for 2026 to keep this on my LinkedIn.
Yeah, because and I think that you came to me the way that a few other women have come to me, which is I do this and this and this and this and this. So how do I do my elevator pitch? Because a lot of us are such multi hyphenates, and it feels weird to let go of a part of ourselves. But it doesn't mean you're letting it go forever. So, like what I was explaining to you was that, when I'm pitching corporate teams to take my workshops, I had been including that I was a copywriter until a coach of mine said, cut that out. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't serve any value to the person who would be buying from you. So it doesn't mean that it's no longer a part of my identity. It just means for those intents and purposes, we're just not going to talk about it right now.
It's not a highlight reel. Yeah.
It's not, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like I said, when we talked about what the mistake is for pitching people, is make sure that you're not talking about you, you're talking about them. So if that copywriting portion isn't relevant to them,
Yeah.
leave it.
Yeah. Attention is so fleeting. You've kind of highlighted some transformations that have happened in your work, but is there a transformation you consistently see people have after working with you?
Just that I would the consistency of that clarity.
Mhm.
Because again, I don't think a lot of us take the time in the beginning of our businesses to really sit down and, maybe we like roughly think about our ideal client and we have like a little bit of an idea of a brand voice. We put the brand colors together, but my program goes so deep on that stuff because again, we're storytelling with our content. And the only way that someone is going to buy your product or your service is if they can have the vision of themselves using that product or service. If they cannot picture themselves using that product or service, then they will not buy from you. And if your product or service isn't clear, then people aren't able to picture themselves. So it all starts with that clarity. And I think a lot of business owners don't realize just how clear they need to be on certain things because it makes sense to us in our heads, right? But somewhere between our brains and our mouths, it loses translation for the customer. So I think that within my program, I ask a lot of questions that people don't normally think about their business on a day-to-day basis. And it really makes them stop and think and get really clear on what they are actually offering.
That is so needed, especially because I've never had when I'm meeting someone new and, they send me to a website or they send me somewhere and like all of their brand messaging is not who they present themselves as, right? Or it's just like super old or just, they've had several transformations and it's so important that like who you are online, who you are in person, it's consistent to your point because like you want to have trust at every interaction. And when you lose that or there's a question, that doesn't make people want to buy from you, right? They go like, "Oh, let me pause, put the credit card down." Like
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people think about, I think about my spending habits and, when I'm making a big purchase and the type of research that I do, you have to remember that people are doing that same research on you. And that's why, even doing things like if you're a business owner, jumping on podcasts like this, because that's going to help your search results of people seeing who you are and what you're about. And you're so right about being consistent on those platforms because that's again how people are finding you and getting their information about you.
I'm also seeing that 2026, and this is not a hot take, but there's so much in person, right? And we're rusty. Those of us that have worked
Yeah.
remote or do a lot of Zoom, we're rusty in our in-person interactions. And so the ability to like work with you, get really clear in messaging, confidence building, when you have those, I think is so important because that in-person connection, I'm finding I'm getting way more traction overall. Yeah.
Yes, I am too. It's funny. As far as trends go, I am seeing people really getting back into in person. I just had like a committee meeting with one of my networking groups last week, and everyone's like, "We need more in person. We need more in person." We're just looking for all these events to go to, and it's because there's something magic in person that happens with your personality that, I mean, Zoom calls are one thing. You can definitely bring energy to a Zoom call, but I really think the days of cold outreach are just, I mean, if they're not already dead, they're getting there because people have so many options no matter what industry that you're in. And to just receive a cold message out of nowhere when you're like a busy person, it's like you don't always have time to look someone up. Like, why is this person bothering me? But when you meet someone in person and you're attracted to their energy in person, it's just such a different feeling and a different vibe. And that's again why it's so important to like know what you want to get across. Like go into a networking event with a goal too. Go there. Don't just like aimlessly go there, be like, okay, I want to talk to 5 people about my program or something like that. But make sure you have a plan of what you're going to talk about.
And as we think about watered down messaging with that, right? It's because like you have an interaction with someone, you meet them for the first time, they tell you what they do.
Mm,
That's going to get watered down immediately by their memory. And so if you already start watered down with messaging, like it's gonna be water.
yeah.
Like,
Or if you
truly.
start like super general, like, what do you do? Oh, I'm in digital marketing. Oh, okay. Like
Right. Right.
you have such an opportunity to say something so much more exciting than I'm in digital marketing. You can build upon that. What are your differentiators? Like, why you? What makes you stand out? Like, can you add humor? I some of my clients do a lot of like metaphors to explain what they do, opening with something like that. What can you do to be memorable?
Mm. And I've also gotten to the point when I meet people and there's like that connection, they want to refer people. I've written down my messaging too and been like, here's an email, short, like bullet points,
Oh,
because yeah, their
yeah.
memory is not going to be it. Like,
Well,
here's how I want you to talk about.
no one's going to sell you like you can sell yourself. Absolutely. If I'm ever, that's such a great point. If I'm ever asking for someone to refer me, I will always give them the language because that also makes it easier on the person who's referring you. They're already doing you a favor by referring you. Why not make it easier for them and give them just something to copy and paste? So I love that you brought that up.
Thanks. Yeah.
And guess what? When you work with me and you have your brand messaging on point, one of the things that we do is we put it all into a brand Bible so that you can copy and paste things and you don't have to like always think about it. There's certain things like when I hop onto an online networking meeting and I go in the Zoom to introduce myself, I have that on a spreadsheet so that I don't have to go into a networking meeting and think, what am I going to type to introduce myself? And oh, let me gather all my links, my LinkedIn link, and I have that on a spreadsheet. So I can just copy, paste, boom, done. And I do that for all my clients too, because that makes that type of outreach so much easier. It cuts the time in half.
Yeah, I can't write another new thing from scratch. I'm so sick of
Yeah.
that. It's just like whatever
Yeah.
people need from me, I need to have it in one place.
Yep. Totally feel that. We're busy. We're entrepreneurs. It takes a lot of brain power to write things out. Why not have those things that you're constantly saying about yourself over and over again, just in one place?
That makes complete sense. As we wrap up, I want to think about when it's time for like a messaging refresh. Is there a time frame that you find people need to kind of refresh what they're doing, or when's kind of one or two signals for someone to be like, oh, my brand messaging really needs some help?
I would say if you are on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and you're putting out messaging and hearing crickets, that's when it's time to think, why aren't people engaging with my stuff? What am I doing that is making people not hit the like or the comment button? Um, and I would say the other thing is that just if you're not feeling clear, if you feel like you're going to networking events or getting on sales calls and you're explaining what you do and people just aren't getting it, there's something that they're missing. You feel like you're either rambling or not saying the right things. That's when it's time to get some clarity with me.
Yeah, having that clear differentiator, because when you're in a room full of people that have a similar kind of role or they help with similar problems, like knowing who you are and why you're different and who can work with you, it's massive.
Yeah, exactly. And practicing it too, because you can have that down, but some of us get nervous in those situations. And so we get in there and then all of a sudden our brain just it's like being on a game show. You're watching from home and you're like, that answer is easy. And then the people who are actually on there are just sweating bullets because they're so nervous. But that's why I like to be very repeatable and practice messaging points with my clients because there's a point where you've said the same thing so much and you've rehearsed them that you go into autopilot when you're talking about your business, and that like a good autopilot, the kind where you're just rattling off those really awesome messaging points because you've just done it so many times that it's natural to you.
And that frees up your brain to be able to look at cues, right? Like micro expressions. Are they vibing with it? Are they not? Do I need to pivot in the moment? So that's really, really
Yeah,
helpful.
absolutely.
Oh, gorgeous. Well, thank you so much for being here. Where can the audience find you? What do you have upcoming for 2026 that you'd like to share?
Yeah, 2026, we're getting more into the corporate world, trying to get teams to communicate more confidently, get people who might be leaders but are holding back to really get that executive presence. And I'm also continuing to work with founders one on one on their brand messaging. So, other than hitting the stage in Miami, where you can see me if you're local, that's what I have in store for 2026.
That's amazing and so needed, especially the corporate world needs so much help with communication, decision making, presence, all of the things. So
Yeah,
I love that you're, offering that and really expanding there. That's lovely.
thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you so much for watching Musings and Modalities. You can tune in the second and fourth Thursdays of each month at 3:30 p.m. Pacific, 6:30 p.m. Eastern for more fabulous episodes. Thank you for listening. You've been listening to Musings and Modalities with me, Tristen, your pragmatic shaman bestie. For more powerful healing tools, join me every second and fourth Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio. I cover a variety of topics to meet you wherever you are at on your spiritual journey. Learn techniques to work with pendulums, past life healing, astrology, and more. Please share the show and subscribe for more guidance from your pragmatic shaman bestie at musingsandmodalities.com.